Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's meeting. As you'll see, I've got Councillor Moore standing in for Liz Hardman because Liz is away at her wedding. So thank you, Sarah, for agreeing to do that. Can I ask Joe to read out the emergency evacuation, please?
Oops. If the continuous alarm sounds, you must evacuate the building and proceed to the assembly point. From this room, you follow the green running person signs to the exit using either the marble staircase at the end of the building nearest to Bath Abbey or the main staircase. Please do not use the lifts. The assembly point for this building is in Orange Grove on the green outside Browns. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, we do. We've had apologies from councillors Colin Blackburn, Deborah Collins, Sarah Evans, Liz Hardman, Steve Hedges, Sean Hughes, Eleanor Jackson, Grant Johnson. Oh, sorry, Eleanor, you're here. Oh, yeah, forget that. Yeah, I think that was because of the operations. Thank you. John Leach, Barrett Pankania, Paul Roper and Toby Simon.
Thank you. So, item 3 is the monitoring officer has agreed to give a general dispensation for all councillors that are in receipt of state pension and therefore an interest in this item. So, any other declarations of interest from the floor? Councillor David Wood.
Thank you. I'll explain this in item 8 as CEO of Avonleas Trees and Director of Avonleas Trees Trading Limited, but I'm advised by the monitoring officer I can still vote on the report.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Yes. Thank you. So, minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a mover from the floor that they're correct? Councillor Matt McCabe, and a seconder. Councillor Waite, and everybody in agreement with that? Thank you. So, just to remind everybody to please switch their phones to silent or to off. Remind members to use their microphones when speaking. Let the webcast know if you do not wish to be filmed. Make sure you keep your papers away from the microphone. If you see a flashing light on your microphone, do not swap your unit. Just indicate to the operator and they will deal with it. So the council is being webcast to the public this evening. So item 6, there is no urgent business from the chair. So we're going to move on to item 7, members of the public. May I ask Neil Steinhoff to come up, please?
Michael Coffey, who's not able to be here this evening, has asked me to read his statement. I support the new Sydney Place and Sydney Road livable neighbourhood because this is a residential road that was never intended to be a relief valve for the A36. This scheme redresses the balance on Sydney Road from motor vehicles back towards pedestrians and cyclists and ensures that everyone has an option to move around safely. Opponents argue that the livable neighbourhood benefits only its residents and that traffic and pollution have simply been displaced. This argument fails to view the scheme with Bath's livable neighbourhood strategy as a whole, as well as the active travel master plan released earlier this year, in which Sydney Road is a key link. If some of the many short car journeys currently made in Bath shift to active modes of travel, the resulting reduction in congestion would also benefit those that still rely on their cars, for example, because they do not have the mobility to cycle or live in communities that are not well connected. This scheme does not prevent anyone from travelling into the city by car. But we cannot achieve the modal shift that we need if we do not create more space locally where people feel safe and encouraged to take up walking and cycling. Of course, it is important to assess the wider impact on the local area, and that is exactly why a trial is currently taking place. Full conclusions about the impact can only be drawn once the data has been published, having been collected, as clearly stated by the Council, outside of school holidays and before the Warminster Road construction works, contrary to misinformation that has often been repeated. What can be said is that the livable neighbourhood has restored access to and enjoyment of Sydney Gardens for thousands of residents and visitors alike, and made the route to school safer for hundreds of pupils that walk along the road every day, an unquestionable public good. Until the trial is concluded and the results assessed and discussed, bitter, often personal attacks on the livable neighbourhood serve no purpose. This scheme has enjoyed large support in several rounds of consultation, publicised to and inviting responses from the whole city, as well as a local election in which the Lib Dems made livable neighbourhoods a key campaign promise. I appeal to the Council to show leadership in lowering the temperature of this debate and ultimately to press ahead with its popular vision to make Bath and its public spaces safe and healthy for all its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Because Neil has made a statement on behalf of Michael, there will be no factual questions. Thank you. Thank you, Neil, for your statement, but it will go back to the resident cabinet member. So may I ask Sarah Toy to come up, please?
Good evening. I'm speaking as a chartered civil engineer and a transport expert. I have more than 25 years' experience designing, implementing and evaluating sustainable travel schemes that aim to improve public health, safety and well-being and reduce emissions. In other words, initiatives that improve people's lives. My interests in this scheme, the Sydney Road scheme, are both strategic and also as a member of staff at the University of Bath. In 2020, I worked with Baines, some of you may recall, to co-create the 2030 net zero shared vision. And this livable neighbourhoods strategy is a key part of delivering that vision. As I said, I'm currently employed at the University of Bath in the Institute of Sustainability, and my work involves researching cities around the world that are implementing innovative schemes to reduce traffic impacts. So Baines has the chance to be a global leader by implementing the Livable Neighbourhoods scheme. The experimental closure of Sydney Road offers an exemplar lighthouse intervention as part of this LN programme. With the introduction of a cheap and simple road closure, you have initiated the opportunity to increase active travel, improve air quality and reduce noise levels in that area. You've also created a safe and attractive route to the schools, parks and city centre for not just residents but visitors. So whilst of course there will be complaints from people who have to drive for a few minutes more, I would suggest the focus now should be on the silent majority who will benefit and are already benefiting from this closure in the short term and in the long term. The ETRO needs to be made permanent to lock in those benefits for everyone living in Bath. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Can I ask group leaders or those that are asking factual questions, a factual question on the statement that has been read? Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Moss.
Thank you for the statement, but no factual questions.
And Councillor Hell is standing in this evening for the independent group. Councillor Hell.
No factual question.
Councillor Ward.
No factual questions.
Councillor Wright.
What is the cost to put in place the Sydney Road livable neighbourhood?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, my mic's on. No, I don't have access to that information, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Sarah, but your statement will go back to... Thank you. So, Mayor... So I think that's it. Yep, thank you. So I'm asked Christine Harrington, who's going to make a statement on behalf of Robert Stone.
Rob Stone says, "My message is to reaffirm to this Council my full support for the ETRO on Sydney Road. I speak for myself, but my words are also those of the huge majority of our community, about 120 households who want it to be permanent. So why? This intervention is long overdue. Before I lived in the area, there were commitments since 2003 to making our road a quiet residential street, a Lib Dem promise then. But apart from our road being detrunked and declassified, Our neighbourhood has become the bypass for the A36. Documented evidence shows the disparity of numbers of cars and vehicles on our road and the numbers on the A36. We were taking up to 70% of traffic most of the time. Plans for the A36 link road were dropped by the Lib Dems after a group of determined residents fought to protect their local environment. Who can blame them? They succeeded and we moved on. Today, the Lib Dems Climate Emergency Manifesto spells it out. Cleaner air, active travel, reductions in car use in our city, safer and healthier streets for communities, residents and visitors to Bath. Baines called for proposals for their new LNs. Our submission had the highest level of support in Bath. We were chosen as one of the 15 to go ahead. Thorough, far-reaching consultations informed the council plans for our road. You might say, what evidence of need for an LN? Our answer, Speedwatch, police monitoring, documented serious accidents, reported threats to residents, costly damage to vaults, signs ignored, cars speeding, huge numbers of rat runners every day, cycling accidents, the disabled struggling to cross in time. What more do you need to justify the decision to put in and keep our modal filter? The result, the trial is a success. Children walk to school on our safe street and tell us about it. Visitors to the gardens and canal are safe and tell us about it. Our space has been transformed into a healthy, safe community space and it's blossoming. For drivers to object to taking a little longer on their journey as it is an infinitesimal inconvenience compared to the huge benefits to a whole community. Misinformation, intimidations and threats have no value. Let's listen to those who live and move around the area and to the monitoring that has been undertaken. If there are problems, let's mitigate for them. To remove our LN by the end of could be the end of LNs in Bath. Our simple road closure has transformed our community. With this and future LN projects, Bath could be and will be a global leader as a clean, healthy, safe city. So Baines Council, please keep our LN and keep to the path that you have taken us on.
Thank you. So there will be no factual questions because you are reading on behalf of Robert Stone. Thank you. So, Susan Charles.
Good evening. Susan Charles from Access Bath. Our suggestion, request is to reform design in the planning process and construct accessible homes for all new build at the onset, thus saving extra cost at present to the NHS and social services departments. Grand Designs last June featured a couple who planned to build a new home as one had suffered a stroke in their 50s and now a wheelchair user. Kev McLeod asked what the most important features were needed to this new build. Views, decor, kitchen worktops were not the most important. Access was. They asked for level access throughout, 80-centimetre wide doorways, an accessible bathroom for wheelchair users, light and power point switches 90 centimetres from the floor, and light stairways. 5 changes that would enhance their new way of life. Of course, strategically placed joists for a lift shaft could be incorporated in the original plans, in case. A movable bathroom wall creating more space, in case. A bath could be replaced with a previously prepared level access wet room, in case. We are a growing older population with long operating and treatment waiting lists, bed blocking, lack of care home space, couples being split due to lack of access within the family home, causing mental and practical challenges for all around you because you cannot leave hospital and go home. Statistics say 50% of the population will receive a long or short-term disability in their lifetime. £72 billion lost to the local economy per year due to lack of access in homes and public transport for the mobility challenged. We are all one diagnosis away from needing accessible home and transport. Independence and dignity can be lost. Imagine all that entails moving home, alterations, upheaval, the cost, all at a time when you and all those around you are coming to terms with a new way of life. Access planned at the onset for all new build homes means they could be readily available if needed, with no need to move. Not everyone can or wants to downsize to a multi-purpose complex like the Chocolate Quarter, as nice as it is. I know many who already worry about how they would manage if. We are all one diagnosis away from needing an accessible home and transport. Thank you for your time. Please take a moment, close your eyes, and imagine, how would you get out of this building without the use of your legs and eyes?
Thank you, Susan. Can I ask Councillor Guy if he has a factual question?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your statement, but no factual questions.
Councillor Moss?
Thank you for your statement, Susan. No factual questions.
Councillor Hale?
Susan, no factual questions.
Councillor Warren? Councillor Wright?
Thank you for your statement. How many accessible homes have been built by this administration in the last 5 years?
I don't know the numbers, but from what I hear, it doesn't sound enough.
Thank you, Susan. Your statement will go back to the relevant Cabinet member.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see that David Redwell is not here with us this evening, so may I ask Matt Cooper to come up, please?
Good evening. Last year, I gave a statement to Council about the benefits of plant-based eating, and I'm grateful to Councillor Warren for meeting with me. I learned that Baines doesn't have much direct responsibility for catering, and it seemed at the time that there was little scope within the Council for progressing plant-based eating initiatives. The National Plant-Based Council's campaign has had many wins, including councils at Exeter, Calderdale, Oxford, Oxfordshire, and most recently, Nottingham, making statements or passing motions in support of plant-based eating. I'm pleased to say that, along with Iris Gerossa and Anthony Simpson, who are also speaking today, a local Bath and North East Somerset group for plant-based councils has now been formed. See the website plantbasedcouncils.org for info. I'm here again because we are still in a climate emergency. It has not gone away. Globally, last month was the hottest August on record, making it the 15th consecutive month of record high global temperatures. Last year was the hottest year for the planet on record. This year is on track to beat it. In the UK, the extremely high rainfall between last October and this March that caused such havoc for farmers, significantly reducing crop yields, was found by scientists to be made 10 times more likely and 20% wetter due to climate breakdown. In the last week, Storm Boris caused extensive flooding across Central Europe, tragically killing 23 people and forcing the evacuation of thousands from their homes. In fact, so many measurable indicators of Earth systems are off the charts, and so numerous are the global impacts of climate breakdown that I could be here for hours listing them. The word emergency doesn't even get close. So we urgently need to get to net zero, but we simply cannot do that without addressing our food systems. They are responsible for 1/4 of all greenhouse gas emissions. Considering European emissions for the food sector, 83% are due to animal agriculture. Plant-based eating is the elephant in the room. If you are serious about meeting your net zero commitment, and I quote, to provide the leadership to enable the Bath and North East Somerset area to become carbon neutral by 2030, as well as doing the same for our own operations, then you must get serious about reducing emissions from our food systems. And to do this, there has to be a shift away from diets with high meat and dairy consumption to diets that are predominantly plant-based. Showing the leadership you lay claim to is really what I'm asking for, to lead by example. Despite having little direct authority over catering decisions, you could make the bold move to issue a statement in support of plant-based eating within council settings. This would demonstrate real leadership. The normalisation of plant-based menus and eating in wider society requires such acts of leadership by our institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Guy?
Thank you, Matt, but no factual questions.
Councillor Moss?
No factual questions.
Councillor Hale?
No factual questions, thank you.
Councillor Warren?
No factual questions, thank you.
Councillor Wright?
Defer to Councillor Helges.
Thank you for your statement. How much emissions could be saved by going to a 100% plant-based diet?
So if you go to a vegetarian diet, you can reduce the carbon emissions by about 50%. And I think an Oxford University study showed that if you go fully plant-based, you can reduce them by 73%. So it's significant savings, which is good because in the UK, our food sector has a 50% above average emissions for against the global average. So we're starting from a very high emissions point.
Thank you, Matt. So your statement will go back to the relevant Cabinet member. May I ask Irish Geroso to come up, please?
I'm here to talk about some of the most urgent environmental issues that we're facing: water pollution, deforestation leading to loss of biodiversity, and excessive water waste. These problems are all connected. I'm happy to know that the Bath and North East Somerset Ecological Emergency Action Plan is in place, but I believe it is missing a key point: the adoption of a plant-based diet. Here's why. Firstly, water pollution. This is a major issue, and animal farming is a significant contributor, releasing large amounts of animal waste and antibiotic, which contaminate rivers, lakes, and oceans, threatening both ecosystems and clean water access for billions of people. Furthermore, the livestock industry also consumes an enormous amount of water. Around 15,400 liters of water are needed to produce just 1 kilogram of beef. This is a stark contrast to plant-based foods like lentil, which require only 250 liters per kilogram. With over 1.7 billion people living in areas of severe water scarcity, it is essential to rethink our consumption habits. Deforestation is another major issue, which is driven by the need for more land to raise livestock. Every year, an area about the size of Portugal is destroyed. This not only wipes out our habitats and displaces wildlife, but it also speeds up climate change, since forests absorb up to 30% of the world's carbon emission. The good news is that shifting to a plant-based diet can address these issues. It is stated in your action plan to encourage environmentally friendly diets, so promoting plant-based eating is a logical next step. This helps preserve biodiversity, protect ecosystems like the Amazon in my home country, Brazil, and reduce the strain on local resources in Bath and North East Somerset. As residents of Bath, we have a role to play in addressing this ecological emergency. By choosing plant-based options, we can reduce the demand for products that contribute to deforestation, water pollution, and biodiversity loss. As a council, you have the opportunity to lead by example, promoting policies that support sustainable food choices, protecting our local environment, and also contributing to global conservation efforts. I'd therefore like you to consider this ask from the Plant-Based Council campaign. Please implement a plant-based action plan to promote and prioritize plant-based eating wherever the Council has influence. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Councillor Guy?
Thank you, but no factual questions.
Councillor Moss?
Lengthy statement, but no factual questions.
Councillor Hale?
No questions, thank you.
Councillor Warren?
No factual questions, thank you.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you. Defer to Councillor Ross.
Thank you for your statement. Can you tell me what are the health implications of a 100% plant-based diet?
A balanced plant-based diet reduces the risk of coronary heart disease by 25%, cancer by around 15%, type 2 diabetes by at least 50%. It is also rich in antioxidants, which help fight inflammations and protect cells from damage.
Thank you, Iris. May I ask Anthony Simpson to come up, please?
After successfully addressing the climate emergency head-on, I want you to imagine that Bath and North East Somerset has fully transitioned to a genuinely sustainable, climate-friendly, nature-restoring, plant-based diet. Then imagine someone comes to a council meeting like this and asks for you to support a motion to return to a UK diet with meat and dairy and other animal produce. The council would need to weigh up the evidence and arguments, so what difference would it make? Well, the constituency is 135 square miles in size. We'd need an area half the size of this to put the animals on. We would then need to clear another 10% to grow the crops to feed the animals, so 80 square miles of our local land needed for this purpose. This would wipe out the majority of local natural habitats, including woodlands, polluting our rivers, and this extraordinary land clearance would extend abroad to where forests are deforested to produce the animal feed that we need. It would quadruple our greenhouse gas emissions from food by shifting back to those diets. A family eating a plant-based diet saves more greenhouse gas emissions than another family that's installed solar panels, an electric car and a heat pump put together. And a lamb curry, for example, has over 10 times the greenhouse gas emissions of a chickpea curry. Of course, no council would agree to this idea, to increase greenhouse gas emissions and devastate the majority of our land, wiping out the majority of our wildlife and increasing water pollution and health issues. However, today, 60% of Bath and North East Somerset land is taken up for this purpose, leaving less than 5% of our land with remaining woodlands. The majority of these numbers come from Oxford University. The Baines Plant-Based Council Community Group also support the Rights of Nature motion today. Animal agriculture has been the driver of historical deforestation in the UK, leaving us one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. A shift to plant-based diets enables the opportunity for the UK to quadruple our woodlands and natural habitats without competing with providing nutritious food for us all. I know that our councillors are serious about the climate crisis. I therefore hope are open to the UK's world-leading research on this topic, rather than allowing the barrage of misinformation to undermine our actions and prevent us from taking the action that we so desperately require to create a hopeful and safe future for ourselves and the wildlife we share it with. I therefore ask the Council to allow us time for a longer presentation of the evidence, and I would ask our councillors to show leadership by calling on national government to support the transition towards a plant-based food system. After attending a number of lectures by climate scientists at Oxford University, I took an MSc in Sustainability and Renewable Energy, and I've been working in that sector for the last decade. However, we have a plan for fossil fuels, that 30% close to of greenhouse gas emissions are come from food, and we do not have a plan for that today.
Can I ask Councillor Guy for his factual question?
No factual questions, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Moss?
Please, can you send councillors a link to those numbers that saying that 60% of land is being used because...
Is that a factual question?
It is a question, yes. Can you? And the answer is either yes or no.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I can share the data, but it's the same as the UK, actually. The UK, 50% of UK land has the animals on. 13% of UK land provides crops for animal feed. Only 11% of our land provides crops that we actually feed directly to humans. And in Bath, it's 50% is pasture for animals. Sure, happy to share that.
Councillor Hale?
No factual questions, thank you.
Councillor Warren?
No factual questions, thank you.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you. Thank you for your statement. Is it possible that residents on low incomes will be able to follow the lead of the council by adopting a plant-based diet?
So there was some research about the spring, but recently, last few months, again by Oxford University, who do a lot of varied research on this topic, and they found that plant-based diets were between 22 and 34% cheaper than a standard diet. And again, there's also a huge amount of subsidies in meat and dairy and those types of products, which often alternatives do not benefit from.
Thank you, Anthony. Your statement will go back to the relevant cabinet member. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see that Chad Allen is not here, so we'll move on to Michael Faulkner-Corbett, who's going to read a statement on behalf of Martin Farrell.
This statement seeks to draw attention of this committee to ensure that the Council pays particular attention to the level of scrutiny given to the proposals that directly affect the World Heritage Sites of Bath, and for members to appreciate the current disconnection between policymakers, project assessment and decision process. Many years can pass between the formulation of policies and their consequential implementation. The lapse time over relevant events may enable reflection and rethinking of policy. Members are entitled to, and indeed insist, that developments are of a quality that respects the World Heritage Site. This Council has legally signed for adherence to the policies documented by the City of Bath World Heritage Site Management Plan 2016-2022. Decisions taken at committee rely on officers' reports and personal interpretations of members. Members in the case of the Planning Committee are prevented by protocols from having any prior knowledge of what they are about to decide at committee. This protocol can hardly be described as both transparent nor democratic. Policy decisions involving the evolution of the local plan may gestate from developer lobbying and plan making by the policy unit. In-depth investigation as to the appropriateness and the potential of achievable implementation as to how proposals might be in conflict with policies in the NPPF, the World Heritage Site Management Plan, and the placemaking plan itself. Policies can also be compromised by legal constraints rendering them non-compliant. The clear and obvious danger is that when proposals come forward, they may be found to be problematic for any number of reasons, putting the planning department into a position when it defends proposals of its own making that are shown to be systematically defective and lacking in terms of character and design finesse. The evidence of lack of meticulous scrutiny is amply demonstrated in recent developments in Bath. The Western Riverside development neither graces the city nor makes any positive contribution to its architectural heritage. The lack of creative design befitting to the World Heritage Site is resulting in the placing of Bath on the UNESCO at-risk register ever closer. A city of the world importance of Bath deserves an effective, independent scrutiny panel of experienced practitioners with responsibility to advise on projects with the express intention of ensuring the very best and appropriate solutions are found. My plea, therefore, is that the Planning Authority are supported by an independent scrutiny panel and that the Council fully engages with stakeholders before any decision is required at committee.
Thank you, Philip. As that was read out on behalf of Martin Farrell, there will be no factual questions. Thank you. Gracie Allen.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for having me. So whilst I was writing this, I realised there was a big similarity between the youth voice and nature, and not one you've probably thought of before, really. So in conversations about planning and when you put motions through council, when was the last time that a young person was involved in that conversation, and when were they on an equal level to everyone else? And when was the last time that nature was a priority, when you put through a motion about planning, building a house or building a road? Nature and young people are often the most impacted areas by your decisions, but they are silent in all of these conversations. I'm not talking about primary school age children. They have forest school and they have play built into their curriculum. I'm talking about older students when they start to sit exams. You could end up spending a whole day inside, too scared to cycle to school because the bike lanes aren't safe. They then sit in a classroom all day because there's not enough funding for teachers to take them outside and actually see what they're learning about. And then when they're walking home, a new housing estate has been built on the green area that was once in their local housing. So the Royal Psychiatry Board found that being out in nature not only helps your mental health, but also helps to lower your blood pressure and helps with your physical health as well. So in a time when the NHS is under so much stress and national health is mental health in young people is at an all-time high. Why are we making it so hard for young people to get out into nature and connect with what's around them, which will then make them feel better? I spend a lot of time outdoors, and last year I had the opportunity to take 20 young people up to the Lake District, and we spent 4 days camping and walking through the mountains. But the thing that really stuck with me was that when we got there, the kids there didn't even realise that mountains like that exist in the UK, because they'd never had the opportunity to go there. And one of them came up to me afterwards and said that it was the best thing they've ever done, and still now they talk about it. So I encourage you, when you make decisions about the future of our city, to also consider the impact on the silent voices, on nature and the people that rely on it for their own mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Gracie. Councillor Guy, do you have a factual question?
Thank you, Gracie, but no factual questions.
Councillor Moss?
Thanks for your statement, but no factual questions.
Councillor Hale?
Thank you, but no factual questions.
Councillor Warren?
Thank you, but no factual questions.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Gracie. What would the implications be for this right of nature motion not succeeding this evening?
I think it would be terrible, because nature has to be considered when you make these kind of decisions, because what was here before us, nature, it doesn't make sense that we don't consider such a crucial part of our society. Just because it's not sat in the room with us doesn't mean that we don't consider it when we make decisions about our city.
Thank you, Gracie. Thank you. Alison Harper?
Living sustainably is not just about cutting carbon emissions, for there is also an ecological crisis. The two, unfortunately, go hand in hand, and thus there can be no doubt that this motion carries an all-important message and purpose for the future of all living beings. It is about doing no harm and allowing all life to flourish. When studying for my PhD with practice at Bath Spa University, I used the term eco-literacy. Eco-literacy is about developing a knowledge that humans are connected to everything else on the planet: animals, insects, plants, rocks, the air that we breathe. Eco-literacy means also having the ability to understand the principles of organisation of ecosystems and using those principles for creating sustainable human communities. I see a disregard for the natural world around me every day, from the neighbour spraying with weed killer an area of ground perilously close to St Catherine's Brook, to a man spraying the very small weeds on the narrow pavement outside the church where children and pedestrians pass by every day. I see many security lights left on all night, bad for bats, moths and other flying creatures. Neighbours light bonfires, and not just for burning wood. I could go on. As a volunteer on Bathampton Meadows several years ago, I noticed the stream running into the Avon, very dark, almost black in places. This is runoff from the nearby Bath Eastern Bypass, composed of brake dust, tyre wear, road wear, washed down after heavy rain, of which we now get plenty. We are not encouraged to consider the impact of this when we buy a car and what that car leaves behind, whether on the ground or contributing to air pollution. This is all the more poignant as the River Avon catchment is celebrating the return of the amazing ecosystem engineers and keystone species that are beavers, their way of life providing many opportunities for other creatures, insects and aquatic life to flourish. This is what we humans should be doing, but levels of eco-literacy need to be much improved first. As humans struggle to catch up with the sometimes catastrophic effects we are having on the natural world, and baselines, which means that which is left, get lower and lower, only improvement can happen with this sensitive legislation. A few days ago, it was a beautiful early morning, and sticking my window out of my bedroom window, all I could hear was traffic noise from the bypass, despite it being nearly a mile away. As we discover and understand more about the complexities, mysteries and interactions of human and other microbiomes, one thing is clear: we are nature and nature is us. We must do everything in our power to protect it.
Thank you, Alison.
And we abuse it at our peril.
Councillor Guy?
Thank you, Chair. As you mentioned it, did you support this Lib Dem administration's transfer of Barkhampton Meadows over to the National Trust?
Yeah. Councillor Moss?
Thank you for the statement, but no factual questions.
Councillor Hale?
Thank you. No factual questions.
Councillor Warren?
No factual questions, thank you.
Councillor Wright?
Refer to Councillor Ross.
Thanks for your statement, Alison. I'd like to put the same question as to the previous speaker. What would the implications be for the rights of nature motion not succeeding this evening?
Well, we don't know, do we? We don't know what the future holds, and that's the terrifying thing, I think, that we're reaching tipping points or just about to reach tipping points, and we don't know what happens after that. It's an unknown quantity, and I find that extremely, well, it's terrifying for my children and for their children.
Thank you, Alison. And I'd like to thank all the speakers that have come tonight. We're now going to move on to item 8, the Annual Climate and Nature Progress Report. I believe Councillor Warren is going to move that.
Yeah, thank you. Colleagues, tonight I have pleasure in presenting to you the first combined annual report on Bath and North East Somerset's progress in tackling the climate and ecological emergencies. After the warmest Northern Hemisphere summer on record again, global atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations have increased 1% in the last 12 months to hit 425 parts per million in July, when the safe level for human civilization is calculated by scientists at 350. And the UK's State of Nature report last autumn showed no let-up in the decline of wild nature on these islands. On one level, it's therefore pleasing to be able to report to you that Bath and North East Somerset continues to be seen as a local government leader in this field, ranking 7th of all local authorities according to Climate Scorecards UK. We were also one of just 24 local councils to have implemented, a year before government requiring it, a planning policy that does ensure that biodiversity will be in a better state following a building project than before. As a district, we continue to make steady progress in carbon emissions reduction, following the expected uptick in emissions in 2021 following COVID lockdown the year before. The list of direct actions taken by the Council to tackle climate and boost nature in the last year is long, and you can read it in the report. Highlights include the opening of the Keynsham Recycling Hub with a huge 3,800 square metre, 783 kilowatt solar array, rainwater harvesting and more than 200 trees, and installing air source heat pumps in our care homes, Cleve Court and Coombe Lee, to utilise the solar panels already in situ. We have consulted on a future planning policy that will be still more stringent in requiring energy efficiency and more biodiversity gain of developers, having already introduced one of the most ambitious policies in the country last year. And we hope to further ease the planning pathway for renewable energy. We have required landlords whose rental properties fail to meet minimum energy efficiency standards to improve the energy efficiency of 70 homes in the last year. It is, of course, enormously pleasing to see this solid progress and leadership, and I want to thank our whole officer team for their commitment across every department of the Council in achieving what we have. I do think it is important, though, to state that neither we in Bath and North East Somerset, as a leading authority in this area, nor any other UK local authority are yet doing enough to reduce carbon emissions or boost nature. Our community, just like all other UK local communities, will not be on course to hit our aspiration for net zero by 2030. And to do so will require an absolute step change at national level in terms of leadership, of funding and of boosting the powers available to local government in the key areas of public transport and active travel, renewable energy and the electricity transmission network, energy efficient buildings and nature protections. The new government has made positive noises in a number of these areas, but we have yet to see the extent of their vision. So next month's budget will reveal whether their manifesto promises were to be trusted. Will our new government enable our local authorities to stand up more robustly to the developer lobby in requiring low-carbon homes fit for the 21st century, located in communities that effectively support a sustainable low-carbon lifestyle, as many European countries do? Will we be effectively supported to empower all of our residents in making their homes as energy efficient as possible? And will government provide the clear leadership we so much need to bring about the transition in the way we move around? These will be the tests by which I judge them. I therefore move recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 to approve the annual report for publication, and I note that a clarification will be included in the final version published on our website, which will correct an error in the data on walking and cycling numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Do I have a seconder? I believe Ollie Henman. Thank you, Ollie.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Warren has already outlined, in the period of this report, there was a tough environment. Inconsistency from national government led to challenges for delivery, and there were delays in infrastructure and lack of direct funds. However, we are optimistic that as an administration, we are delivering for local people to build a greener and healthier future. As Councillor Warren has already outlined, the report shows a steady overall decrease in greenhouse gas emissions and includes case studies of some of the excellent work going on across the Council. I'm particularly glad to see real steps being taken forward to enhance nature and improve biodiversity in our area. The nature recovery is being delivered through our strategic green infrastructure projects, which have led place-based partnerships to benefit nature and people. A good example is the Limestone Landscape Link, which connects the Cotswolds to the Mendips, and the team also aims to better integrate nature recovery across the Council in areas such as planning, regeneration and the management of the estate. Key examples to note in the report are the local mandatory 10% biodiversity net gain policy, which Councillor Warren has already highlighted, and that has led to the creation of 74 biodiversity units, equivalent to restoring 27 hectares of grassland. We've worked with Avon Needs Trees on the purchase of 422 acres of land to be transformed into the Lower Chew Forest, and in addition, the Forest of Avon Trust and Avon Needs Trees to create the Great Avon Wood, which will cover a 100-acre woodland. This report also demonstrates that to deliver on our ambition, we need collective action with the whole of society to achieve the goals we've set for 2030. And as a council, I believe we'll continue to work closely with local communities, and it's important to highlight that we really appreciate all of the excellent partnership and collaborative action with community groups across the district. Let's continue to work together to improve our future for people and the planet.
Thank you, Councillor Henman. So, Councillor Jackson.
A slight technical hitch. However, Madam Chairman, I think there's a problem with paragraph 3.9, this statement. A new development at English Combe Lane, delivering 16 new homes built for people with autism and or learning difficulties, has been designed to create a nature-rich setting, etc. I wonder if this does not call for a dispensation for the members of the Planning Committee, because if they vote for this report, in favour of this report which we have before us, it could be construed as meaning that we approve of this project, which is not yet come to the Planning Committee, and of course members of the Planning Committee have an open mind. They could vote against it. I don't know which way, and I haven't judged it myself either. So could we have a ruling about whether it's permissible for members of the Planning Committee to vote for or against this report, which seems to be anticipating whatever decision might be made next Wednesday? And the second point I'd like to make concerns the next paragraph, 3.10. This project looks like it's an initiative from the Somer Valley Rediscovered, when in fact it was Westfield Parish Council who were alerted to the possibility of a housing estate in the Waterside Valley in Radstock Westfield, bought the fields and teamed up with Radstock Town Council, who are an equally exciting project on the other side of the stream. So it was only when the parish councils working together, consulting residents and responding to what they said, it was only after they had taken this initiative that we were very then pleased, of course, to have the support of Soma Valley Rediscovered. So it would have been nice to have a little credit here for parish councils and what parish councils can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Can I ask Michael to pick up on point 1?
Chair, I don't see the interest to be relevant because this is simply a factual statement, and all councillors are being asked to do is to approve the report, the annual report. They're not asked to make a decision in respect of 3.9, so I wouldn't have any concerns about members voting in relation to the resolutions on this report.
Thank you, Michael. And I believe point number 2 regarding Westfield will be picked up by Councillor Warren. Councillor Waite.
I'd like to talk briefly about the Keynsham Recycling Hub, which is in my ward. When I first became a councillor in 2019, one of the first things I learned was all the recycling and rubbish was going to come to Keynsham East. So I was a little bit worried about the fact that it wasn't perhaps the best look, but now that it's there, and it has, as Councillor Warren said, it has a huge green footprint of biodiversity and plants, despite all the stuff that comes in and out all the time. When you go there, it's a very straightforward process to get to where you want to be. It's easy to find the particular resources that you wish to remove from yourself and give to the council, and it has a very, very good set of staff. If you have any difficulties at all, there's always somebody there to help you, because some of the stuff you bring is quite awkward, and there are people there that perhaps aren't very strong, and these staff are excellent in doing the work that they do, and I recommend you come and have a look if you haven't done so already. The pièce de résistance, however, is the recycling shop. I would definitely recommend that you go to the recycling shop, because you will be amazed, if you haven't seen it already, what people throw away. Really impressive things, as far as I'm concerned anyway. And I've used it, I confess, many times to recycle in a very realistic way. I was canvassing, you won't believe this, I was canvassing during the general election in an area quite close to the recycling centre, and I started talking about the recycling centre to a constituent, and she said, "Were you responsible for that recycling centre?" Well, I said, "Well, it wasn't me personally, but the council was responsible." And she said to me, "It's my special place." So I loved going there, and her eyes misted over as she talked about the things that she had found in the recycling centre. So, of course, it's wonderful that all the profits that you get from the recycling centre go to local charities. So we are actually recycling in a very real way, and also giving to services that serve the community even better. And in fact, I have been told by people in this room, who I won't name, who have come over from other parts of the constituency to actually use the recycling centre, and they come almost for a day out to spend some time looking at it. And it's absolutely brilliant, and congratulations for putting it together.
Thank you for that statement, Councillor Waite. Councillor Heldes.
Thank you, Chair. At last week's Climate Emergency and Sustainability Policy Development and Scrutiny Panel, we were told a new strategy for both climate and ecological emergencies will be introduced next year, so in 2025. To ensure the strategy is effective, I urge that we include SMART targets, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time-bound, with clear metrics to track how we're progressing towards them. So the strategy will be published in 2025, which leaves us just 5 more years to achieve net zero by 2030. Given a lack of shared data in some areas and the limited progress we've made, is this realistic? Transport alone contributes 32% of our Scope 1 and 2 emissions, more than domestic electricity and gas combined. Yet, are we making enough progress in this critical area? And the CRSDS investment is highlighted as key to enabling a shift in transport modes, but there are some major concerns like unrealistic timelines, how are we going to spend all the funding by March 2027, and cutbacks, for example, in CRSDS-funded projects like the Summer Valley Link. Some of the active travel elements have been taken out. So I think the section on decarbonising transport in the report reveals a lack of cycling infrastructure. So no new infrastructure has been delivered since 2022. So projects have gone to consultation, but there's still no tangible progress. So how can we encourage people to opt for alternatives to driving if those alternatives don't exist? The report lacks crucial data on our progress, particularly towards reducing car journeys and miles by 25% by 2030. And last week's Cabinet questions revealed that between 2019 and 22, traffic levels at key Bath sites dropped by just 1.14%. And with 70 permanent traffic on site, I would expect much more comprehensive data on car use and active travel in this report. So even if we take out that one chart on walking and cycling that was just not very useful, I think the data feels still cherry-picked at best and even misleading in some cases. And of the 80 new actions proposed for the next year, only one is on transport, although, like I just said, a third of our scope of 1 and 2 emissions is coming from road transport. So this imbalance needs urgent attention. And for the first time, the report includes progress against the Ecological Emergency Action Plan. However, it remains unclear how far we've come so far towards becoming nature positive by 2030, as promised. And original climate and ecological emergency action plans contained clear timelines, yet the progress rating in this report don't seem to align with those timelines. It's unclear whether actions are on track or significantly delayed. And given that many original deadlines have now passed, this lack of clarity is concerning. No risk assessments were included in the report, and there's no indication of how individual actions contribute to the achievement of overarching targets in respect of climate and ecological emergency. In the absence of this information, it's unclear what will happen if the Council's core targets will not be achieved by 2030.
Thank you. Councillor Crossley.
Sorry, I might have come up as Dina. Mine seemed to have not come in there. Thank you very much. I've got a question for the Cabinet member and a point of endorsement. So, first of all, I think this is an excellent report and congratulations to the team producing it. And I see there's a lot of councillors pictured during the various pictures. But first of all, my question is, do we have any way of estimating that when we move to online meetings, how much that is saving the council in terms of carbon? Because obviously the online meetings was something that came about when we went into the pandemic, and now that we come out of the pandemic, we're still having a mix of real meetings and online meetings that I really enjoy. But do we have any idea of how much is saved by going to the online meetings? That's my question. And then the point is that I want to endorse is you make a reference to the Avon Pension Fund, and the Avon Pension Fund, which I chair, which is part of a whole number of pension funds across the South West. We are leading the way in terms of the South West, and in fact the local government pension scheme in general, in terms of our decarbonation and the way we're working on it. And we're challenging our officers to look at even yet more imaginative ways, because a lot of the decarbonation we do will not necessarily be straight away benefiting Bath and North East Somerset. It will be benefiting as only secondary, because those schemes will be implemented in diverse locations around the southwest of England. So I'm very pleased that you've included that in the report, and I'm happy to say that the pension fund is really completely in line with what you're trying to do and what we're trying to do as a corporate body outside the various bits of the council and across council areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crossley. Councillor Hale.
Chair, we've heard a lot about green space and health and climate, and I'm just wondering how these things that we believe are good will help us kick back on some of the likely sites for the local plan. I mean, we in Keynsham have sat as a cross-party and responsibly reached a conclusion on where we believe we can support, but my concern is, and I suspect it's a concern that's shared across the board, if we're going to put even more houses, for example, into Keynsham, God forbid, we are going to take up more green spaces, so less recreational area. We are going to put more traffic in, so I appreciate that, you know, ideally from that side of the chamber, everybody will be issued with a scooter, but that ain't going to happen in the near future, I suspect. So I would like to think that all of the efforts in relation to this will see us kicking back on areas where we otherwise wouldn't want to put houses, but feel that we've got to, because it will be disastrous for certainly a town like Keynsham. I would also support what Andy had to say about the recycling centre. It is excellent. Ian James, he gave us a tour the other night for the Keynsham Forum, and it really was an eye-opener, and certainly, yeah, the shop is magic. I think the only thing is that I can't believe the rumour that when he spoke to the lady who sort of frosted over, or whatever you want to call it, that he said to her, well, I'm ever so sorry, you've got to get out more. That can't be true, can it? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. Councillor David?
Sorry, user error. Thank you. I want to speak particularly on our response to the ecological emergency, and I'm really delighted to see the full action plan and progress report included. An area that I'm particularly interested in is how the Council can improve our own estate for nature, including our parks and green spaces. In my own ward, I've seen the impact that the Parks team, in collaboration with the organisation Your Parks, can make, the impact that they can make to local spaces working with community volunteers. In my ward, this has included seeding and scything a field to promote wildflowers, vast fruit tree and bulb planting, coordinating action with community volunteers to remove invasive species, and working to encourage wildflowers to grow on roadside verges. In response to the ongoing decline of species and habitat space, I believe we need to see more of this work. However, given the pressure on finances, I acknowledge that it's very difficult, and I'm grateful that we've been able to fund this work. And in Bath, the recent round of community activator projects was funded through Neighbourhood SIL. Some sites have also benefited from top-up funding from the WECA Community Pollinator Fund, and as part of this, there'll be some new habitat structures and information boards popping up in parks, referencing Dan Norris and other public spaces. So this is really great to see, but the point I wanted to make is that we don't have sustained funding for this kind of work, and this is going to be really important if it's going to have an impact over the long term. So I really endorse the point that Sarah made in her speech earlier, that we need a step change from national government in order to recognise the role that local government can have in improving local spaces. So I'm really proud that we've been able to do so as much as we have on this shoestring, but we need an urgent resolution to the local government funding crisis if we're going to sustain investment into the local environment. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell?
Yes, thank you for the report. And the Labour Group are pleased to see this, and that work's happening, there's action being taken. It's not just a tick box exercise, and it's not just pie in the sky and all theory. I just wanted to ask, on page 64, this is on the action, progress updates and next steps. It talks about, at 1.2, promoting the energy at home service to residents on low incomes to increase take-up of grant support and advice. And at 1.3, work with the Bath and West Community Energy to increase awareness of their renewable energy projects and support. I'd like to ask how what the ratio is of take-up in Radstock regarding that promotion and actually take-up of that, the grants and advice. Thank you.
Thank you. So, anybody else that wishes to speak? No? So I'm going to ask Councillor Warren now to sum up.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a really useful discussion. I do want to say we've highlighted some really positive results, outcomes, but it has been a real uphill battle these last years because we have been doing this in the face of opposition from government, really, essentially, who have stoked culture wars, and very much looking forward to that hopefully changing going forward. So we've heard from Councillor Henman about how much we are doing, and from a number of other councillors about how much we are doing on nature and the ecological emergency, and we really are taking it seriously. We are considering it in planning. What else have I got here? We've heard about the fabulous facilities at Keynsham Recycling Centre. We've had a question about how much has been saved from online meetings. I think that must be a complex response to that, because we'd have to, but we will try to get one to you. I imagine there will be savings in transport from not moving to meetings, but equally there'll be an impact in terms of server carbon emissions, so it might be tricky, but we'll try. We've had questions about green space and whether we can use our protections of nature to push back on sites for development. All I can comment on that is that the new housing numbers will be a challenge, that our proposed from government will be a challenge to accommodate, and we continue to push for stronger planning policy to ensure that new housing in particular does not create additional traffic and does provide appropriate protections for nature. And so there are questions about not having constructed cycle infrastructure since 2022, which I would say does rather misunderstand the time required for projects of this sort. Some interesting questions as well about developing key performance indicators, which is a really difficult thing. And it was something I was thinking as the scrutiny panel, I noticed, had a lot of questions on this topic. Perhaps we can bring some policy development items back there so you can really understand the scale of the complexity and the difficulty of obtaining appropriate data in these areas, and help us to develop some good measures. So thank you everyone for an excellent discussion, and a final thank you really to officers for all their hard work in delivering the many excellent projects that are highlighted in the report, and here's to hoping that their job will be made much easier in the coming months and years by a renewed commitment at national level to these existential challenges. And I propose we move to the vote.
Thank you. So we're going to vote on the report. So all those in favour?
Okay.
I see, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think that was
press the
right.
little person.
And then you get...
It's not your blue one first.
Yeah.
And that's the red. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good.
Oh, that's not clear.
Is it? Well, red is.
So Joe said, stick your hand up if you need assistance with voting. Can I just check that everybody that wanted to vote has voted, because our numbers are not tallying up? Okay, Joe, can I ask you to announce the result?
Yeah, that is carried with 43 in favour and 3 against. Thank you.
Abstaining? 3 abstaining.
Sorry, 3 abstaining. Sorry. It's a cross. That's odd.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to item 9, Policy Development and Scrutiny Annual Report, and I believe Councillor Romero is going to move that motion, or report, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. And good evening, councillors. I'm moving this paper as Chair of Children and Adult Health and Wellbeing Policy Development and Scrutiny Panel and the Chair of the Chairs and Vice Chairs Group. In case you were not aware, this is not my first year in scrutiny. I think I have about 19 years of experience across a range of panels and under different political administrations. But luckily for you, I'm not going to talk about all of that. However, I thought you would like to hear a tiny bit more about the role of scrutiny, as well as recap the first year of the 3 PDS panels in this administration. In this authority, and for the last decade or so, we have had policy development and scrutiny panels. These combine both the statutory duties of scrutiny, as well as giving backbenchers the opportunity to help explore and shape council policy and future decision-making. So what is the point of scrutiny? Crudely, this could be summarised as holding the executive to account by providing the checks and balances for decision-making. The previous government clarified the function earlier this year, stating that effective scrutiny helps secure the efficient delivery of public services and drives improvements. Effective overview and scrutiny should provide constructive, critical friend challenge, amplify the voices and concerns of the public, be led by people who take responsibility for their role, drive improvement in public services and strategic decision-making. Despite the change in government, I hope this is a definition that we can all still agree with. Within our panels, there are certain statutory matters which we must examine, such as the resources PDS, where the annual budget is considered prior to the formal adoption at full council, and from my own panel, the annual safeguarding report for both children and adults. As an aside and an advert, that report is expected at our October meeting, a public meeting to which I am happy to welcome councillors and the public. Listening to Gracie Allen speaking earlier in this meeting reminded me that an area we should be exploring is how to include young people in decision-making, so I look forward to the discussion between the chairs on that. The public can make statements to any or all of the panels. This can be useful for councillors as they can hear directly about matters which concern local people, which is not always the same messages you hear on, say, social media. Another way PDS can reflect the concerns of the public and provide the checks and balances of executive decision-making is through a process called call-in. Since the start of this administration, there have been 2 call-ins. The first at Resources PDS on the use of land at Entry Hill, and the other at the Climate Emergency PDS on the Southlands Livable Neighbourhood Scheme. Policy development is and has been a feature of this council for a number of years. During the last year, there have been several pieces of work led by PDS task groups. These include work on local food growing, as well as ongoing pieces of work looking at school streets and also knife crime. As you might think, some of these subjects do cut across the panels, and we encourage cross-panel working on these groups. And some groups have also included non-scrutiny councillors as well. The conclusions are reported at the relevant PDS groups, as well as to the Cabinet member. The work the members of the 3 panels do on policy development and scrutiny is part of how the Council can be the best it can be. It is set up to be a critical friend to executive members, so it adds value in ensuring that the decisions made are the right ones for our residents, and I urge you to support the noting of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. I believe Councillor Moss is going to second this report.
Yes, thank you very much. Quite happy to second this report as Chair of the Corporate Scrutiny Panel. One of the difficulties with reports like this is what information you do and what information you don't include. There's the temptation to tell everyone everything, in which case the report would have been about the size of War and Peace. But the difficulty is to give a snapshot. And I'd say, if I'm going to be slightly critical about this report, is we probably need to actually give some more emphasis to the critical friend element, rather than simply looking at things that were actually scrutinised. And I'll use a couple of examples. As part of the budget process, across the panels, there was a great deal of discussion about money cuts from the voluntary sector. That was reflected through to Cabinet, and Cabinet actually changed the policy, changed the proposals that came to the February budget meeting to ensure those are coming over 2 years and 1 year. And that discussion continues. So I think that is positive. But there's also, again, for example, a sample of the work undertaken by the Climate and Environmental Emergency Sustainability Panel gives the example of the item that was discussed was emission-based car park charges. What was scrutinised? The proposal to introduce emission-based parking charges in council car parks. That does not really give a full flavour of those discussions or the controversy or the way that discussion goes on. So I'm happy to second this, but I think it's a discussion for the chairs of the scrutiny panels to ensure that next year's report actually focuses a deal more on where we've made a difference and actually where we disagree. Because irrespective of party political labels, the role of scrutiny is to give the opportunity for all backbenchers to criticise and suggest to Cabinet, and to make sure when we report that we reflect on those different roles.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Do I have anybody who wishes to speak? Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd just like, as the Leader of the Council, to thank everybody in the chamber that does give up their time to do scrutiny. It's extremely appreciated by the Executive. And your comments are genuinely adhered to, noted, listened to and reflected on by the Executive. But I'd probably like to build on that, because sometimes you may feel as individuals that go into scrutiny, you're just getting reports read to you and you're asking questions on those reports, which is useful in itself. But I think scrutiny could be a lot more than that. I think it can help us with policy development. You can really focus down on some key issues and come forward to the Executive with some great ideas, and we'd appreciate that. So it's not just shining lights on the dark parts of the Council, but actually really coming forward with some good ideas, constructive ideas, based on facts, based on a lot of research. So I hope that scrutiny might move into that realm. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. So I see no one else has got their hand up. So does Councillor Romero wish to sum up?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I take on board the points made by Councillor Moss, and I apologise for naming his panel incorrectly. I think sometimes we have very lengthy titles to our panels, and you sort of use a shorthand, don't you? So apologies for that. But I think the points you also made around what is missing from this report are indeed well observed, and I think for next year, I think we will work together on what the report ought to really be shining that light on, illustrating. I think I just wanted us to perhaps challenge you on one point, because of course our role might be a critical friend, but that does not mean to say we always need to criticise. So I think where something is well done, perhaps that is also part of our role to say so. And then finally, I'm delighted to hear the words from our leader, Councillor Guy, and I look forward to seeing that us being able, or enabled rather, to do additional work somehow being reflected, I guess, in the resource allocation for our scrutiny panels. Anyway, I would like to move to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. So we're going to move to the vote on the report. All those in favour?
Right. It's not very well done.
Okay, can I ask Joe to announce the results?
Yes, that vote is unanimous and carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So we're going to move on item 10, the annual report on RIPA and IPA, and I believe Councillor David Wood is going to move the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Pleased to move item 10, the annual report of the use of the Regulatory and Investigatory Powers Act and the Investigatory Powers Act. I'd like to thank the officers for their work in preparing this report. I'd like to move the recommendations as tabled. Recommendation 2.1, noting the summary of statistics for the use of RIPA and the IPA. 2.2, note the training module on RIPA and the IPA. And 2.3, to adopt the Home Office Code of Practice. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. And Councillor Robin Moss is going to second that.
Yes, second this. Just need to point out that this report does have a contradiction for many of us within the chamber here, and that is, on the one hand, we are quite happy to see the use of information, surveillance, whatever, in order to reduce crime, in order to deter crime, and in order to prosecute where crime is committed. But of course, many of us have got that equal contradiction of being wary, unhappy with information and how information is held, how it's stored, who views it, the rest. So this report is important because it stresses the security that is around that information, how often that information is accessed, and how it is used. So I will quite happily second this. I'll be voting for this report, but let's not pretend there are not contradictions. And it is important that there is security and knowledge about how we obtain this information and data and how we use it.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak on this report? No? Councillor Wood, did you want to say anything to sum up?
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. So we're going to move to the vote on the report. Councillor Fox, can I ask you to turn off your microphone, please? Thank you. Has everybody voted who wishes to vote?
Thank you. That is unanimous.
Thank you, Joe. So we're going to move on to item 11, the Green Motion, Rights of Nature. Councillor Wright, you're going to move that motion?
Thank you, Chair. It's our responsibility to do everything within our power to create a planet that provides a home, not just for us, but for all life on Earth, says Sir David Attenborough. Rights of nature is not an abstract concept. In some parts of the world, it already functions as a legal tool. The law recognises that nature deserves the same protections as people or corporations. For example, New Zealand has granted the Te Awatupa River the same legal rights as a human. This ensures that if the river is harmed, the laws that protect people can also be used to defend the river. Humans often see themselves as the most important beings in the world. Their perspective tends to prioritise human needs over environmental needs. Rights of Nature challenges this mindset, reminding us of our deep connection to nature. We are part of nature, not its masters. The Green Group recognises that new primary legislation from the UK Government is essential to fully support the rights of nature, and we urge the Council leader to write to the Government requesting this new legislation to safeguard nature. BAINS is currently reviewing its constitution. This offers an opportunity to introduce a clause that advocates for the rights of nature. This could use existing UK laws to help to better protect our local environment. For instance, the Council could appoint a sewage officer to monitor pollution and sewage spills using the Environmental Protection Act to prosecute offenders and protect the River Avon. Additionally, the Council could place tree preservation orders on all trees on all BAINS land. When it comes to biodiversity net gain, the Council could prevent developers from exploiting loopholes to produce biased, paid-for ecological surveys. Preventing this would ensure that nature's interests are truly represented. The Green Group also requests that this Council votes for the Cabinet to commission officers to prepare a report detailing how to embed the rights of nature into the Council's day-to-day operations, planning procedures and decision-making processes, making better use of existing laws. This follows a recent UK Government spokesperson's statements acknowledging that UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. As a Council, we can contribute by ensuring that the protection and restoration of a resilient future for both people and nature is at the core of everything we do and is reflected in the BAINS Constitution. According to the Liberal Democrats website, protecting our precious natural environment lies at the heart of the Liberal Democrat approach. Liberal Democrats have a bold plan to restore the UK's natural environment and give everyone access to a clean and healthy world. By voting for this motion, you, as BAINS councillors, have a unique opportunity tonight to set a precedent and become the first UK council to formally advocate for the rights of nature. As Sir David Attenborough says, we must do everything for all life on earth. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wright. Councillor Ross, are you going to second this motion?
I am, thank you, Chair. This motion is close to my heart as it stems from my ecology and conservation management background. My work in this field has repeatedly shown that the natural world is not given the level of consideration it deserves, only being prioritised when it offers something of immediate value. The rights of nature introduces a transformative legal approach, recognising nature as a rights holder. This empowers the Council to better protect ecosystems through local policies and decisions where current laws fall short. By adopting this motion, the Council can address gaps in environmental governance, ensuring nature's interests are represented and safeguarded, collaborate with legal experts such as Lawyers for Nature to integrate these rights effectively into BAINS Council's decisions, protect residents' health by preserving biodiversity and promoting cleaner air, water and green spaces. As fellow councillors frequently point out, removing local biodiversity harms our residents' health, resulting in a loss of wildlife and vital green space. Healthy ecosystems directly benefit our community's well-being. Protecting nature's rights is an investment in our future prosperity, allowing ecosystems to regenerate and thrive for future generations. While efforts to improve biodiversity net gain through development are commendable, they often don't happen on site and rarely go far enough to compensate. Nature cannot constantly adapt to our requirements, so we must adopt a more preventative approach by recognising nature's rights before damage occurs. With increasing climate impacts like flooding and landslides, the Council must take proactive steps. The rights of nature equips us to prevent further environmental degradation and maintain BAMES as a leader in environmental governance. Incorporating the rights of nature ensures we consider environmental impacts in every Council decision. It protects nature, supports our economy, and provides sustainable agriculture, tourism and recreation. Supporting this motion strengthens existing protections, making them more practical for today's challenges. It embeds nature's rights into our Constitution, reminding us of our responsibility to the natural world that sustains us. Please support this motion and uphold the rights of nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Henman.
Thank you very much. Protection of nature and improving biodiversity, restoring ecosystems is, of course, a key priority for the Lib Dems here in Bath, and we agree that it is essential to enhance and protect the natural world. As has just been shown tonight in the annual Climate and Nature Report, we as an administration are driving forward ambitious plans to improve biodiversity. We're looking at a range of projects to enhance biodiversity in specific areas, and we're also moving forward on major reforestation projects and habitat recovery. These changes will be transformational for our area and will mean that many more residents will be able to benefit from access to green spaces close to where they live. However, while I'm personally aware of the concept of the rights of nature, I also know from my own experience at the UN that there is no consensus yet on this at an international level, let alone at a national or local level. The challenge here lies in how we define nature. As things stand in the UK, there is no legal basis to treat nature as a legal person. Indeed, there could be situations of conflict between different elements of nature, as well as conflict with our own statutory responsibilities as a council. This concept, unfortunately, would be unenforceable and could actually lead to unintended consequences, a lack of clarity, which could lead to delays in the work that we've just been discussing and that is already underway. It would be very difficult, for example, to ensure smart targets on this. This is a matter that requires much more clarification, and it should be taken up for national consideration before a local council could consider any steps. As such, the Lib Dem group will not be supporting this motion. We are focusing on delivering our ambitious targets to improve biodiversity in the ways that can already be measured and tracked as set out in our recent report.
Thank you. Councillor Stretfield-James.
Thank you. The Rights of Nature movement seeks legal recognition and protection for ecosystems and other natural entities such as rivers and forests, much like human rights. In this motion, the Council is being asked to recognise that nature has rights and to consider those rights in decisions that it reaches in day-to-day operations, planning procedures and decision-making processes. I have no doubt that all councillors in this chamber are alarmed at the pace and effect of climate change and the need to preserve, protect and enhance the natural world in the Bath and North East Somerset area. And the question is, what can the Council do in response? One answer is provided by the paper presented to this meeting by Councillor Warren on the many policy and practical steps which have been and are being taken in response to the declared climate change emergency. The proposal here, however, asks the Council to recognise that nature has rights. As a practising lawyer, I see this as an interesting legal concept, but it is not one that is currently recognised in the law of the United Kingdom. It is a concept being promoted by the Rights of Nature movement, and it is just that, a concept. There is no legal framework governing how such rights are defined, or can be enforced, or by whom. These are immense jurisprudential questions, and I have no doubt will be the subject of many fascinating conferences debated across the world. The questions are, however, nowhere near being answered or even defined at the moment. If, for example, the Council recognises that a forest has rights, how should it balance those rights, which have no legal definition or legal ability to be enforced, against the rights of the landowner in planning or enforcement matters? Who is the legal person who would be capable of asserting the rights of the forest or individual trees? Does the tree have rights against the beaver who wishes to fell it? Does the beaver have rights against the tree? In areas of law where rights and obligations are recognised and enforceable, there are detailed codes and rules which can be applied so that these issues are capable of being resolved. These are all very interesting questions, but they are nowhere near being capable of being answered, and until there is an established legal framework which can support recognised rights, I would suggest that it would be entirely inappropriate for a council operating through taxpayers' money to formally and unilaterally recognise that nature has rights and agree to enforce them and integrate those rights into its operations. I applaud the imagination and motivation of bringing this motion to council, but I propose that it is not a motion which can or should be adopted by this council today.
Thank you. Councillor Hurst.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to have additional debate time this evening on the Council's response to the ecological emergency. However, I feel that this motion is not well thought through. Earlier this evening in item 8 of the agenda, we have set out the approach the Lib Dem administration has taken, prioritising the work and the core team that we've developed on the ecological emergency. A plan to be proud of. The action plan we've set out is tangible and practical. In contrast, the motion that you've set out is intangible and impractical. Key points that are worth flagging in the annual report is the huge success we've done in securing biodiversity net gains from the Council's action. BAINS has been recognised as a joint leading authority for our response to the nature decline and the action on biodiversity. There are real examples of projects, the ones in Waterway Valley in Westfield, improving pollinators in the authority's parks, delivering the Great Avon Wood. There is no current legal basis to progress this motion. The concept, while being interesting, requires the rethinking of legal structures that we operate under, including our property laws. Even if, after appropriate scrutiny, we wanted to embed these rights into policy, day-to-day operations and the constitution of the authority, we can't do this unilaterally. I want our valuable officer time, which has been hard fought to get that officer time to deliver the ecological emergency work that we are delivering, protected. We don't want it being sidelined into work streams which are not going to help actually make a tangible difference to our ecology now. At worst, this motion puts many key policies at risk, will waste much time and effort, and could lead to the Council being tied up into consuming legal proceedings. Let's celebrate and amplify the laser focus that this Council has on the ecological recovery and the practical things we can do right now. Delivering clean air, protecting our rivers, saving our meadows, growing our forests, using the legal frameworks that we already have to drive that harder and faster. Let's leave the philosophical and legal debates to others and in other places. This is not serious, the motion that's been put forward, and it needs much more policy development and much more scrutiny before we can kind of vote on something of this nature. So I urge the Council to reject the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Helgess.
Thank you, Chair. The Rights of Nature motion is being brought to Council at a crucial moment. In the coming months, our Council is reviewing its constitution. This gives us the perfect opportunity to reflect on what we stand for and what we value. As a member of this working group, I see this as a chance to ensure we do more than just protect human interests. We can give a voice to those who are underrepresented, including nature. Nature is in crisis. The floods, the landslides and climate impacts we've seen make it clear that we need stronger protections now. By recognising nature's rights, we can act before more harm is done. This is about being proactive, not reactive. The Constitution Review is our moment to embed these principles into how we govern, ensuring nature's rights are part of every decision we make. The Rights of Nature motion is a practical step. It strengthens our existing policies and gives us the legal tools to protect ecosystems in planning, development and land management. This isn't about creating a new system, it's about making the ones we have more effective. Nature isn't just a resource, it's vital to our health, well-being and future. By recognising its rights, we protect not only the environment but also the community that depends on it. As we review our constitution, we must ensure that nature's voice is heard and that this motion leads to real, lasting change.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah Warren.
As someone who became a councillor in large part because of my concerns for nature in light of its rapid decline worldwide and especially here in the UK, I'm very sympathetic to the ideas in this motion. It's an intriguing approach and I will watch with absolute fascination the progress of the New Zealand laws which allocate legal rights to forests and rivers. But here in Bath and North East Somerset, we're just a unitary authority and we have to operate within the laws of our country. We heard earlier just how much we are already doing and how we are leading in this space. I obviously know how hard and how expert our officers are who are working in this field. But I also understand the legal and other constraints within which they work. Given the financial limitations on councils, I continue to be amazed that our staff are able to do all that they have done, and that has been outlined in that report. And I'm quite clear that deflecting them from that work and asking them to draft the report described in the motion will take them away from the important activities that the very small team is currently completing, that they're currently taking to promote biodiversity. And it's also clear that approving this motion will take us into very complex legal territory, and therefore I'm content to vote with my colleagues against this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Warren.
Thank you very much. I mean, what's not to like about nature? I was very lucky. I was brought up in the country and still live in the country. I think farms are given short shrift sometimes, but I do believe they do more for nature and conservation than anybody else because they grow up with it, they appreciate it. Okay, there's a bit more to do with this motion, I think, before it's acceptable. I think there's been some harsh comments. Would that be just political goods? This come from the Green Party, potentially? Is it a little bit political, the motion? Yeah, but that happens. There might even be one later that's even more so. But also, I think it's down to us as individuals and the council. And it does happen now. We're saying about officers. I sit on the planning committee, and I bet we spend, looking at Eleanor for help here now, I say probably 80% of the time on the planning committee discussing ecological issues, nature issues, trees, TPOs, etc., etc., etc. I agree with TPOs. I don't think I agree with putting it on every tree because I live by a big wood. You go into the middle of the wood, all the trees are dying because things around it, just because there's no light to get to it. So you do have to, for want of a better expression, cull some of the trees to let the others live and thrive better. So I do appreciate where you're coming from with this motion, and I'd agree with a lot of it. I just can't quite, just needs a bit more work to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Ross. No, Moss.
Thank you very much. The Labour Group has, I think, taken the view, like many people in the chamber here, that this looks nice in theory, but in practice, some of the practicalities around this are really challenging. And there's two particular elements. First of all, I think the point about legal challenge and legal framework is one that is problematic. I'd certainly be interested to see some kind of risk assessment of how this could be used to challenge decisions and actions taken by not only parish councils as well as by BAMES. For example, in Westfield we have issue with Ash Dieback, also with, as mentioned earlier, with the Waterside Valley and the management of that. There are different opinions about how that should happen. And I think the complexities and the risk of legal challenge and obstruction to actions and decisions is one that is real. And I wouldn't particularly want to add much to what Alice don't actually have a legal framework to deal with this. The other element, of course, is about how we use valuable officer time and resources at a time when we have many communities within Bath and North East Somerset who are struggling. And looking at the report earlier about the ecological emergency and what Baines is doing, and that's something that the Labour Group supports, we have to take our communities with us on that, some of whom do not necessarily agree with some elements of that, and it is important that we do take people with us down a road and not get too far ahead and risk losing them. One thing Joanna mentioned was that it was an opportunity for Baines to be the first council, I believe, to actually adopt this as a policy. The other side of that coin is that no other council in this country has adopted this policy, and I would suggest no one else has done for very good reason. I'm afraid Labour Group will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you. So my last speaker is Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Chair. For me, this is animism by the back door. In cultures where animism is part of the way of life, then enshrining rights to nature makes sense. But it's not culturally appropriate in this country. We don't have that. We don't have that belief. Some of us might, but we don't have that belief. And I think it's wrong to impose religious beliefs on what is in fact a secular council.
Thank you. So can I ask Councillor Wright to sum up, please?
Yes, thank you. I do feel a bit like I'm on Strictly Come Dancing, and I'm not quite sure if I'm in the first episode or the 10th, but probably the first. It's been a very interesting experience trying to put this motion together, and it's quite clear that it is nuanced. We are not advocating for new laws within the Constitution. The Green Group very much recognises that the legislation needed at a primary level does not exist, and that there does need to be some kind of primary legislation in this country to protect nature that does not presently hold in any kind of a way. Hence why we are asking for national government to be written to and asked to create something and spend the time and money and resources that we don't have to do that. What this motion is doing is actually asking for us to use the powers that we presently have in this country better to ensure that we deliver on housing that looks at biodiversity net gain, that looks at trees and how to protect them better with all the tree preservation orders that presently do exist and how to use them better. And importantly for rivers, the number of times I have heard the Liberal Democrats talk about sewage and spillage in the rivers across the UK and how they are going to protect them. Well, what you could do right now is employ somebody to actually take out private prosecutions against water companies that protect the River Avon, which we know does make people sick every year when they go swimming in it, and seriously sick. So there are things that we could do as a council that you somehow have unheard the nuance of this. And I'm disappointed by that, because to be a world leader and to be a unitary leader takes a lot of courage. We know with the climate emergency in 2019, a huge number of people thought that was crazy and did not want to take that forward. This council, after Bristol, did take that forward and recognise just the importance of that. It is not about animism. It is not about some crazy religion. It is about accepting that nature is part of our world. We live within the sky, not beneath it, and that we need to recognise that we are not masters of nature. And how we do that is really important. So I recognise that politically, this room will not vote for it because you have probably been whipped and told not to, and therefore it will not pass. But it is a stepping stone for many, and I know Lawyers for Nature will be taking this work further and ensuring that other councils do take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. So we're going to move to the vote. Thank you. Joe, can I ask you to announce the result, please?
Yeah, thank you. That's 5 in favour, 39 against and 3 abstentions. So that is not carried. That's lost.
Thank you. So we're now going to move on to item 12, the Lib Dem motion, winter fuel payments. Councillor Harding, are you going to move that motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, winter is coming. The energy regulator Ofgem has determined that average annual energy bills will rise by 10% on the 1st of October. For those on a standard price cap tariff with typical household use, energy will now cost around £1,700 a year. From January, it's predicted the price cap will rise by a further 3%. These price rises come on top of the large inflationary pressures we've had on essential items such as food that have disproportionately affected the less well-off. The Chancellor has announced that in England and Wales, winter fuel payments will only go to pensioners who get pension credit or other means-tested benefits. These payments are typically worth between £200 and £300, depending on the age of the recipient. The changes are expected to reduce the number of pensioners in receipt of the payment from 11.4 million to 1.5 million people, saving the government £1.5 billion this year. In Baines, we estimate that over 32,000 pensioners are affected by this. Age UK has calculated that this change will impact over 800,000 older people nationally on very low incomes, specifically those living on less than £218.25p a week as a single pensioner or £332.95 as couples. On top of this, nationally, there are around 1 million more pensioners who are less than £50 above the so-called poverty line who will be hit hardest by removing the benefit payment. And then there are those who experience fuel poverty as a result of living in one of our many energy-inefficient homes. Over half of pensioners say they will be cutting back on heating this winter, and 1 in 5 say they will eat less because of this cut. The government's own figures show that 7 in 10 disabled people over pension age will lose their winter fuel payment. Surely no one wants our residents rationing their electricity by switching off their CPAP machine, which delivers pressurised air, or not charging their electric wheelchair, or not cooking, or not using their electric blanket, just to save money. It's not shroud waving when I say that winter fuel payments are a valid lifeline for many older people during the colder months. Half of the almost 10,000 decrease in excess winter deaths between 2000 and 2012 was due to the introduction of the winter fuel allowance. We can be in no doubt people will die this winter because of this change. We know that cold temperatures have direct effects on physical health. With the NHS under extreme pressure, it will experience even more pressure if people who are fuel poor are ending up in hospital because they can't heat their homes. The carousel of cold home, worsened health, hospital admission, back to the cold home that caused the problem is well described. But that carousel may now be broken as getting people back home with more social care needs is getting harder and harder, and there is no prescription for energy. Community warm spaces, such as that provided in the Chew Valley Library, can only do so much. Longer hospital waits in A&E and for surgery, for instance, will result from this change, affecting many of our residents one way or another. This is not the place we want to be. While it is sensible to withdraw winter fuel payments from those who don't need them, pension credit is an inadequate way of addressing this. 880,000 households eligible for pension credit do not claim it. The line needs to be drawn elsewhere. The system needs adjustment for the very disadvantaged. This motion asks Council to write to Government to think again. Linking of winter fuel payments to pension credit, to review the thresholds for payment such that more of our vulnerable pensioners can continue to heat their homes without making other sacrifices. We will also write to our local MPs for their support. Given our unanimous decision, your unanimous decision, to make Baines an age-friendly community, I urge all councillors to continue to campaign for their vulnerable residents and support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harding. I have Councillor Alton is going to second that motion.
On September the 10th, the Government secured a vote to end winter fuel payments to millions of elderly residents across the country who depend on this income to help them navigate cost of living challenges, including rising energy bills. The universal payment has been a lifeline for people who rely on state pensions for their living. Before I was elected as a ward councillor, I worked as a village agent, supporting people with a range of health and well-being challenges, many of whom lived on limited incomes. I have seen firsthand how crucial the winter fuel payment has been for so many people in our communities, and I am concerned about how our elderly will be managed if this payment is taken away. The winter fuel payment provides reassurance to older residents that they can afford to heat their homes in winter. It is paid in a lump sum to ensure the money is available when fuel bills arrive, and targeted at older people because they are particularly vulnerable to the effects of cold weather and more likely to be on fixed incomes. The Government voted this September ending universal entitlement to the winter fuel payments and restricted access to only those receiving benefit and pension credit. This has reduced the number of claimants in England and Wales from 11.4 million to just 1.5 million. In Baines, the number of pensioners affected by this charge is estimated to be over 32,000. For many of these, among whom are some of our most vulnerable residents, decisions will have to be made whether to eat or heat their homes this winter. The recent poll commissioned by the Liberal Democrats looked at the impact of cutting the winter fuel payments, showed that over 55% of respondents over 65 years of age said they would have to reduce heating their homes this winter. 4 in 10 could have to cut back on other essentials, and 19% plans to eat less when the cold weather arrives. Pension credit is a crucial gateway benefit, giving access to a host of other entitlements, including free television licences for over 75s, council tax reductions, cold weather payments, free home insulation and boiler grants, to name but a few. Despite the many benefits of pension credit, nearly 40% of people entitled to pension credit don't claim it, estimated to be over 800,000 people nationally. Within Baines, the Council's welfare and public health teams are working closely with Age UK and Citizen Advice to identify and contact residents who may be eligible for pension credit. I hope everyone present today will join me in acknowledging and applauding this important work. We have a duty within the Council to look after our vulnerable residents. In line with this, there was the unanimous vote in the last full Council meeting to make Baines an age-friendly community. I, for one, am very proud of this decision, and I feel strongly that we have an opportunity now to stand by that vote by asking the Government to suspend linking winter fuel payments to pension credit, review a new threshold, and introduce better means testing which is more equitable. I urge all councillors to support this motion and ensure that older residents are not put in the impossible and dangerous position of having to decide whether they eat or heat their homes this winter.
Thank you. So before I take speakers on this motion, I have an amendment on the table from the Labour Party. Councillor Moss.
Thank you very much. Moving motion on in the name of the Labour Group, which has been circulated. I guess in some ways this motion is not unexpected. We have got a Labour government, the first time for 14 years, who have taken over in extremely difficult financial circumstances. There are difficult decisions that have to be taken. And I notice the Lib Dems are saying that they see yourselves as the responsible opposition in Parliament. But I'd say that this motion fails on in a number of ways. First of all, the information in it is incorrect. It sets the wrong solutions and has the wrong tone. If we go to paragraph 4, it says only those receiving a pension of less than £218 a week or 33295 for a couple are eligible for pension credits. Wrong. If your circumstances are such that you have a disability or that you are a carer and other premiums, as I call it as well, you can qualify. So they're incorrect to give information that if you've got less than that amount, then you're not going to get pension credit. And I'd say it's the job of the Daily Mail to scare people and to make people angry in order to sell papers. It is not the job of this council to give wrong information to pensioners. There's also looking at context, that we have issues of poverty in Baines. We have issues of fuel poverty and we have issues of child poverty as well as issues of older people who are living in poverty. And the solution to that is, I'm afraid, not writing letters, but actually to support the independent sector in making sure that everybody who struggles with poverty gets the benefits to which they are entitled, and it should be about asking Cabinet to work with the voluntary sector across Baines to find those eligible non-claimants. We should also support those most in need as a priority, particularly those families with children. And if you look at the statistics for Baines, it's working families who are struggling most with poverty. It is not older people within Baines as a whole. So I'm moving this resolution on behalf of the Labour group. I'm not confident it will be supported by the Lib Dem administration, but as I say, I think this motion has got the wrong information, the wrong tone and the wrong solutions to an issue facing our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Harding and Councillor Orton, do you accept this amendment to your motion?
No.
Right, thank you. So do we have a seconder for the amendment? Sorry, Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Leslie Mansell from Radstock, seconding this amendment. The principle here is that we should support the most in need as a priority, and that's what this amendment intends to do. What we should be doing is all we can to find out how many of the estimated 17,000 eligible pensioners should be getting, first of all, the tax credit and then any other support that they need. Those that haven't claimed, because that system has been too hard, because there isn't the support out there in the right organisations to get them that information. We have to remember we've had 14 years of austerity, and how we're going to change that round is going to take more than writing to the government. This was a political choice, and with the winter fuel allowance, it was actually Labour that brought that in for anyone over 60. But I wonder who it was in 2010 who decided to cut that. So it was removed from anybody who was between 60 or 64. And then again, in 2013, it was the Care Minister who said it should only go to people on pension credit. Whoops. And this year in Baines we have over 91% of pensioners that don't actually qualify, but we have 8% who still qualify, and this should be our priority. The Institute of Fiscal Security and the BBC Verify says that the least deprived are pensioners, yet 20% of children live in relative poverty. And if you look at Baines, our figures show that across the area, 11% of children live in poverty. In Twerton, it's 17%. And in Radstock, it's 14%, and so on. This is not about stacking one group up against another to show who is the most deprived, the most deserving, or the worse off. It's about looking at what we can do as a council to make sure that they're getting the right support from the right organisations. And when we look at the other positive initiatives the government are bringing in, like keeping the triple lock on the pensions, which is expected to go up to around £460 next year. And also looking at the warm home plans, the government's investing 6.6 million extra to upgrade 5 million homes. So I second this motion, and I do hope that you'll all support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor
Mayor,
Manson.
can I ask a point of information?
You may.
In the back of my mind, if an amendment changes the whole nature of a resolution...
So at the moment, we're going to debate the amendment, then we'll vote on it.
But in my mind, there is something that says if it makes a significant change, that it's not doable, as it were.
Okay, so I'm going to defer to Amanda Bishop.
Okay, so I think you're referring to the 3 valid amendment points in the Constitution, aren't you? And whereas I'm satisfied that it is still based on the substantive motion that was brought forward and it fulfils the other 2 criteria as well. So it is a valid amendment.
Thank you for that clarification. So we're going to debate on the amendment. Councillor Moss, thank you for chatting there. Councillor Warren had his hand up earlier. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I read the amendment. I felt giddy, actually. It was going round and round in circles, kind of trying to defend the indefensible, I think. Councillor Manson was just having a little cop at the government in 2010 for removing the winter fuel payments from 66 4-year-olds, yet it's okay to remove it from everybody now. Been having a go at the chairman of Paul Burstow, the Liberal Democrat, for saying she didn't go to those on pension credit, which actually was only suggested didn't happen, but now it's okay to take it from everybody, apart from them again. I think it's one of those things, I think even the Labour Party probably didn't like this. You had the one that voted against, you had the ones that had already left the party, if you like, voted against. You'd have to excuse, I'm not being well, so might not be good with numbers, but you had quite a lot that unfortunately weren't available on the day. I think an awful lot more that probably held their nose and voted for it. And I think even our colleagues here really don't believe in the way it is. I don't think any of us, you've got your multi-millionaire pensioners, I don't think any of us actually argue with 300 quid, they don't need it. But there's ways and means of doing this, and this certainly is not the way. I mean, to me, when you have an election, you have a manifesto. The manifesto is probably like a contract with the country. You vote for us, this is what we're going to do. Yet, to me, the Labour Party have broken their contract already. The one thing I had to look forward to about getting old was with 300 quid. And I haven't got that to look forward to anymore. But I'm hoping by the time, by 5 years' time, I think by then, probably Keir Starmer would have upset enough people to have a Conservative government again, so I might well get the 300 quid. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. On the substantive point, I mean, sorry, not on the substantive motion. I mean, on the main point, I think most of the Democratic Group will be comfortable with the idea of some means testing of this, but I think we just feel that the level has been set completely wrong. On the very specific point about pension credit and the work that the Labour Group is suggesting we need to do to communicate to our own residents that are eligible for pension credit but aren't currently claiming it. We are doing a huge amount of work in that space already. So in that sense, you're asking us to do something we're already doing. We are working with Public Health Assistant Advice, with Age UK. We're working with those third sector organisations. We have our own pension credit toolkit. We are going to be writing to all those people who are not claiming pension credit, who could, we think, claim pension credit. So all of that work is already ongoing. So I don't want people to think that we're not doing that work already. That work is underway and will be taking place throughout the autumn.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. I am disquieted by the nature of the substantive because I feel it's ignoring some very vital facts, and I'm, of course, obviously fully behind what the group leader has just said in proposing the amendment. It's the wrong information, the wrong facts and the wrong solution. But there is another element to this which is, I think, in many ways worse. We have all I'm sure, been following the heroic story of Mr. Bates, who I must admit will be one who will not be getting the money in future. But no, he's pointed out to a kind of culture which I have discovered in British Gas. I have, like it turns out, many other people received a monumental bill or estimate of what my electricity bill will be in the coming year. It's completely out of proportion. I can't suddenly use 80% more electricity in the coming year than I have done in the past year. So I ring up the number that's at the bottom of the electricity bill and ask what's going on and what can I do about it, and my meter readings are completely different from the estimated ones. And it turns out that, as with the post office scandal, there is a faulty algorithm. And all over the country, people like myself are receiving these enormous electricity bills. £300 wouldn't go anywhere near what I'm expected to pay in the coming year. And I would hope that this council, by supporting consumers groups, by supporting everybody who reports an astronomical electricity bill, will get the kind of help and support they need from our various voluntary agencies and our own in-council ones. We had a meeting of church representatives of the churches in Radstock and Westfield yesterday, and it turned out the problem is even wider, that there are other suppliers apart from British Gas who are making astronomical demands. There are faulty meters, there are all kinds of things. And I would hope that this amendment will focus people's minds on the practical realities of paying your electricity bill. And in a way, £300 is irrelevant, and so I shall be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Biddleston.
That's better. Thank you. Yes. So you very clearly spelt out a little bit about what the Council is planning to do proactively, because writing letters isn't sufficient. You have very kindly given us some more information, which unfortunately wasn't in the main motion, and actually would have been really helpful if we could have emphasised to those pensioners and to the wider community what it is that we're actually planning to do to support 100% of that missing 8%. The fact that we've got to 8% not claiming pension tax credits is not particularly helpful as it is. And actually, we should, as a chamber, have done a lot better. Not only that, we should also have in this motion the improving people's homes, the getting in there, plugging in that insulation, improving heating systems, and be doing rather better for our pensioners in that way. So, rather than simply writing letters, let's all work across Baines to do more to plug those leaky homes and ensure insulation is in place and advise and assist better with our heating systems, which is surely a better use of our resources than simply writing letters.
Thank you, Councillor Biddleston. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't to speak to that, but Councillor Warren spoke, so I wanted there to speak.
It's good to see you this time round. Missed your last meeting, but you're here anyway. Pension credits. I think the side opposite needs to lessen pension credits. It's uneven playing field. It doesn't balance. You say get more people to claim pension credits, so you get heating allowance. Well, I'm going to take an example for you of a family member. I'm not going to give their names at all. 67 and 63, both in ill health, cannot claim pension credits because they're both not over 66. They've been told it clearly. No heating allowance this year. I passed 66 in May. I thought I'd have one this year, but he's nicked it. I don't need it. Not the point. No, your party's nicked it. I don't need the money. It's not the point. I'd rather not have it. But other people do need it, very clearly. And talk about redoing homes, making sure they're fine. But social rented properties are the biggest leaking properties we've got. And that's the biggest place we have the pensions are actually in need. Please go away and sort out the pension credit system to make sure it actually equates an even playing field. It's my pure ask of you, opposite, to try and sort that out with your government, to make sure, before you start taking benefits away from people, actually make sure the playing field is even and not uneven itself, because people are going to go without, people are going to die this winter because of the inability to heat their homes. It's a very serious issue out there, we need to address it.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. So, do we have anybody else that wishes to speak to the amendment? No? So, before we go to the vote, I'm going to ask Councillor Harding to a right of reply.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to tone, I'm not sure that harping on about positions held 10 or 15 years ago is that relevant. It doesn't help our pensioners next month. Things have changed a lot since 2010. I know that many pensioners will be badly affected by these changes. A pension rise in April will not help with bills now. It's welcome as the 4% rise through triple lock is. And I'm not 100% sure if the motion has been fully understood. We're not asking for universal winter fuel allowance. We're asking for a reassessment of how it's allocated, and that will not in any way or shape or form divert attention from Baines's work to ensure that as many people who can get a pension, that the payments do. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're now going to go to the vote on the amendment from the Labour Party. So it looks like the amendment has fallen, so we're going to debate on the substantive. So I think Councillor Wright had her hand up. Councillor.
Thank you. It's interesting this evening how Councillor Moss talked about how we need to take our communities with us. Winter fuel decisions are made at a national level, not at local councils. It's ironic that after the long struggle to get the peace motion to Bainsford Council, the local Lib Dems and Labour groups are now using a national issue for political point scoring. We should be focused on lifting people out of poverty, making sure everyone can eat well, stay warm and live with dignity, from children to pensioners. The Labour government's decision to cut universal winter fuel payments is a blunt tool that will harm many who are already struggling to get by. We've seen how Labour continues to justify austerity using selective facts and figures. Many people in our communities are finding it harder to afford the basics, paying more and getting less. And this council faces the same challenge. The Labour government needs to rethink, especially around local government reform, so we can have the resources to build a better future for everyone. This council must come together and prioritise public services, communities and the environment over arbitrary financial rules. The local government needs proper funding to meet our shared goals. This council needs to ensure that going forward, repeated notch pointing against each of the two political groups in the next 3 years does not happen. This motion does not seek to address any issues that actually affect people. There are real costs to charities of chasing down names and people and how to best to support them. There is very little information about how this council could allocate resources for improving energy efficiency across Bains, exploring extra funding options and working with local partners, housing associations and energy providers to deliver targeted insulation upgrades for the most vulnerable households. It's not even in the motion. We must also recognise the ongoing need for warm spaces, building on the community grants given by this council in 2022 and 2023 that promise this council, and I would like to propose that this council continues to support local groups offering £250 grants to help run warm spaces that were essential to many people's lives across Bains. We should also maintain an online map so residents can easily find these essential places. Both parties need to do better.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Warren.
I applaud your enthusiasm, Councillor Ripe. I'm in a bad place right here. I mentioned earlier about sort of politicising, if you like, these motions, and I'm sure I'll get pulled up in a minute. There's nothing to dislike about this, but is there really any point to this motion? As I mentioned earlier, you had a lot of Labour backbenchers that would have held their nose and voted for this. Keir Starmer, does he believe it or not? I don't know, I guess he does. But he took the political flak. You've got millions and millions of pensioners, well, not just pensioners, but general public who have gone against this and complained to the government, and he's totally ignored all that. So do you really think he's going to take any notice of Bains? I hope he does, but I don't believe it.
Thank you. Councillor Box.
Thank you very much. I truly believe in means testing this. As a person under 40, a millennial, I would be from one of the first generations worse off than my parents. But as a respiratory physio, I can tell you this: warm homes save lives. It saves the NHS money. And as I return to work this Monday, yes, please think of me on Monday, and this winter, which is a big thing in the NHS, warm homes will prevent admissions and help the most vulnerable in our society. Labour, please can you chat to your friends in Westminster about maybe benefit reform? Please stop punishing the vulnerable in this bureaucracy and the Tory privatisation. Sorry, Tim. And I find it strange that a centre party is writing to a left party about this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else that wishes to speak on this motion? Okay, thank you. So, again, Councillor Harding has a right to reply on the debate.
I'd just like to thank all our colleagues for a passionate and valuable contribution, and let's move to vote.
So, we'll move to the vote. Has everybody voted who wishes to vote? Joe, can I ask you to announce the result?
That's carried with 38 for, 6 against and 4 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to item 13, question statement from councillors. Can I ask Councillor Waite to make a statement, please?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to mark the 10th anniversary of Keynsham now by telling you a little bit about the work of Keynsham's Youth Town Council. Our first meeting was on the 24th of September 2014. Around 15 young people met with 4 volunteer adult mentors, including myself. We elected a chair, secretary and other officers from the young people. Our discussions focused on what we were going to do. It was agreed that the group would make all the decisions, including its name. We decided we would meet once a month with a formal agenda and minutes. Our aim was to make sure the voice of young people would be heard, especially by decision makers and opinion formers. The young people learned the skills needed so that issues close to their heart were known. They learned how to work within the community, how to campaign on improving young people's mental health services, reducing plastic waste, poverty and knife crime, campaigning for votes at 16 and creating new opportunities. To learn how this country is governed, both locally and nationally. This essential information is not taught properly in schools. They learned how to speak in public, take part in community events, raise money for chosen local charities and meet their civic leaders. The highlights include successfully campaigning for floodlights at the Keynsham Skateboard Park, costing £6,000, raising over £3,000 for local charities, discussing with school leaders how to improve their students' mental health, speaking in public about positive solutions to antisocial behaviour by young people. Question and answer sessions with Dan Norris, the then Wrecker Mayor, and also now our Labour MP. MPs Vera Hobhouse and Jacob Rees-Mogg were also at the meetings. He also met with us in London last November when we toured the Palace of Westminster. We have met the Mayor of Bath in his parlour and the leader of Baines Council. In November, Claire Moody, our new Police and Crime Commissioner, will be attending our meeting. Most important of all, we now have young people who are local councillors in Keynsham and others who are more active in the community because of Keynsham Now. This includes the young man sitting next to me, who is a member of Keynsham Now for over 5 years. This is vital, difficult work. Our politics, if it is to remain healthy, every community needs a youth council. I note the comments made by Gracie Allen at the start of the meeting, where she said, "Where is the young people's voice? How can it be heard?" The answer is, Gracie should come to an organisation like Keynsham Now, then she would be sitting in here and not over there.
Thank you, Councillor Waite. Councillor Guy, do you have a factual question?
But thank you very much for mentioning me.
Councillor Moss.
A factual question.
Councillor Hale.
Yes, please. Andy, is there a political balance amongst those who are administering it and leading it?
Yes.
Not the young people, I don't mean.
No, you mean the mentors?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, yes, there is. And there's also a balance in terms of their expertise. We have people from various different objectives. The mentors are there primarily to make things happen. So what the young people decide, we then have to try and organise it. The classic example is the Palace of Westminster trip. One young person said, "I want to go to Westminster. You keep on talking about it. I've never been there."
Councillor Waite, I believe you answered the question.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Warren.
No, thank you, but thank you very much for that, Dave.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you for your statement. No factual question.
Thank you, Councillor Waite, for your statement. Councillor Helgess, to make your statement.
Thank you, Chair. The full business case for the first phase of our Livable Neighbourhoods programme goes to WECA for approval tomorrow. It includes 11 livable neighbourhoods, 4 fewer than originally planned. As I mentioned earlier in response to the Climate and Nature Progress Report, we urgently need to reduce car journeys and miles if we're serious about meeting our climate emergency targets for 2030. Last week, a Cabinet response revealed that between 2019 and 2022, traffic levels dropped by just 1.14%. That's nowhere near good enough, given the target is a 25% reduction by 2030. Livable neighbourhoods are one of the most effective ways to help us achieve these goals, while also creating healthier, quieter and safer streets for everyone. And some of the proposed schemes look promising, particularly in areas like the Circus and the Pulteney Estate. However, 4 of the 11 proposed livable neighbourhoods don't include any restrictions on through traffic, despite this being a key requirement for the WECA CRSDS Low Traffic Neighbourhood Fund. The areas in question are Temple Cloud, Entry Hill, Chelsea Road and Lime Road. Instead, these so-called livable neighbourhoods propose minor improvements like zebra crossing, traffic lights or one-way streets. While these changes may improve road safety, they fall far short of the transformative benefits that low-traffic neighbourhoods can offer. Through traffic restrictions such as bus gate or modal filters like the planters on Southlands deliver far greater benefits for the cost. This higher cost-benefit ratio is crucial if we're going to make real improvements for residents within our limited budget. We only need to look at Bristol City Council, which is moving ahead with an LTM trial in East Bristol, including over 10 through traffic restrictions, 3 camera-enforced bus gates and 8 model filters. And meanwhile, South Gloucestershire is on track to deliver multiple sustainable transport corridors alongside a Livable Neighbourhoods programme. When Councillor Clyde Lokes from Waltham Forest visited Bath in 2020, he urged us not to tinker. But with 4 of these schemes, that's exactly what we seem to be doing, tinkering around the edges. If we want to give people real alternatives to car use, as outlined in our corporate strategy, we need to be bold. If we fail to secure the remaining 3.87 million from WECA tomorrow, it won't be because WECA is enforcing the rules too strictly, it will be because Baines didn't follow the rules. So my question is, how is our leadership working with WECA to ensure the best possible outcomes for our residents? How are we providing them with safer, healthier streets and genuine travel choices?
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Chair. Would the Councillor agree that after listening to the 3 public speakers that were heard here earlier, that they believe that the livable neighbourhood in their area has made a transformational difference to their lives?
I agree with that, and I get that because it includes a through traffic restriction.
Councillor Moss.
No factual questions.
Councillor Hale. Councillor Wright. Warren, sorry.
No, thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you for your statement. Do you know if Baines has put in any school streets?
I don't believe there are any school streets at the moment.
Thank you, and thank you for your statement. That brings our meeting to an end, and I wish everybody a good evening and a nice weekend.